analysis and design with a particular case study of an APM. So it's a pretty short chapter. So yeah, let's begin with it. Second. Yeah. So this is an example of an ATM UI, right? So like object-oriented analysis design is about like basically like before you about like uh, analyzing, that is like breaking down of before writing any code, we understand what the problem is about, right? Like what the system needs us to do, who will use the system, and like what are the inputs and outputs required and all of that, and what are the constraints that exist, right? And after doing that, we basically design it from an object oriented point of view. That is like we identify what are the objects, what are the classes, what are the relationships and responsibilities. And then if it's like just a small program, we stop with just an algorithm. But if it's a larger program, we use a graphical design, right? And there are like many object oriented processes and analysis design processes, and like to basically not be confused with a lot of different notation, there's like a single graphical language that we'll use called unified modeling language, right? So yeah, so it's called UML, and it has like some notation with like use case diagrams that use case diagrams, class diagrams, sequence diagrams, etc., which we'll look into later. Com and then we have the requirement documents, right? So to find the outcome of analysis is so the final outcome of analysis is usually like a requirement document. So the requirement document will have like functional requirements and non-functional requirements, right? So the functional ones are like the non-negotiable requirements you can think of. And the person who is usually going to be making this requirement analysis, requirement document is going to be the system analyst, right? And they can do that with like either interviewing potential users or the system expert, or to refer to other UI for reference, right? So looking back at our like ATM case, like you can look at the UI over here and you can see that you have the screen, you have the keypad, you have the cash dispenser, deposit slot, whatever. And so basically, you can think about what kind of potential users will exist for this use case, like for this ATM, right? Like it could be uh, the customers, and you can think about what will be the point of view of the bank and of the ATM and everything, right? So the system experts could be the bankers, etc., and other UIs you can refer for, like you can see for reference, right? So then you can think about the life cycle, right? The software development life cycle. So first you have analysis, right? Which is like the goal of like understanding what the customer wants. That will be like basically including the UML part also. Like it will be requirement gathering, it will be the user interviews, everything, studying the existing systems, and like basically asking what are the problems you're solving, who will be using systems, everything like that. And then you have the UI UX, which we saw could be the buttons, menus, screens, the colors, the layouts, whatever, right? And the UX is the user experience, which is like the ease of use, and like you can think of the navigation and like how satisfied are the users going to be, etc. Things like that. Then implementation is basically converting the design into code, right? Like writing the actual source code and creating the database and like integrating the modules, etc. Things like that. And then it comes to testing, which is like finding what are the bugs and like making sure that there's no like security failure or whatever. So then you come to deployment, which basically will include like publishing the apps or like launching the websites or whatever is required. And then you finally have the maintenance part of it, right? So yeah, so coming back to the use case modeling, which will be like the first part of what you will do in analysis, in the requirement analysis part, you can see that the UML language will have this particular notation where you have like actors and you have use cases over here, right? The actors are like represented with these stick figures like this, and the use cases are represented like this with like ovals over here and like what the use case is written within it, right? So systems are basically like a set of components that can solve problems together, which as you can see over here, the systems are like indicated using these rectangles, and everything within the system will be like part of are all these components that will help to like address the use cases and solve the problems. And the actors will basically be outside the system that will you be using the system to solve their problems, right? So the system structure will include the objects and the interrelationships, and the system behavior includes the system changes, right? Like when the objects interact. Like for example, when like you make a deposit, your account balance will like change, right? So that will be the changes in the system that you will be able to notice, right? So UML 2 is basically like an updated version of UML that is like more efficient, and it has like 13 diagrams, which are like six of them are system structures and seven for like system behavior. So if you look at the system structure diagrams, they are basically static, right? So like the system behavior diagrams will show you the behavior or like how the systems are interacting and all of that. Whereas the system structure diagrams are basically static diagrams, and these are the six of them that we need to like be aware of, which include the use case diagram, which we have already like seen over here, which includes the user and the use cases. And then you have the class diagram, which has the classes and all the objects and everything. And then you have the state machine diagram, which describes like the state of the uh, system, whether that includes the balance or whatever is relevant. And then you have the activity diagram and communication diagram and sequence diagram. We're not going into detail into them. So we're going into only the use case modeling, the use case diagram with actors and the use cases as we have seen. So that is it. It's a short chapter, and as far as I'm aware, this is what is required for this chapter. So yeah, that's it for this chapter, guys. Um, is there any question, or do you guys want to add on to it something? What kind of questions will be asked in this unit? Okay, so one thing is, since you've been given the bank example, so maybe you can think of other examples too. Like you can think of like a library or other types of examples, and you can think of different use cases, different examples like these, different scenarios, and think about how this thing will be applied, right? The software development life cycle will be applied. So you may, since the software development life cycle is like a very important topic in general, not just in this subject, so you might be asked about like elaborating in like a library or like an ATM, like how this will be applied there. So that is something I can think about that could be asked. Um, yeah. Other than that, maybe you could be asked to draw the UI, but yeah, most likely I think you should concentrate on like remembering the six steps of this, the software development lifecycle. And in case your professor has like stressed on like this as well, then this will be important too, to know what are the different types of UML like diagrams, basically. So that I think is what's important. So anything else? Any other questions or anything, guys? Okay, so if there's no other questions, I think that is it for this chapter. Thank you, guys.